So someone tell me if like in the top left corner it's recording.
You're good, Emily.
Perfect. I've only done this like twice, so. All right, Matt and Kellyanne, I'm gonna let you handle the question asking since these are your guests technically.
Oh yeah, just one note. Matt and Kellyanne are gonna ask some specific questions, but later on, if you guys want to ask like some other questions, just raise your hand, use that option on the button so we will be able to call on you specifically.
Yep.
All right, great. Thank you, Emily. Kellyanne, do you want to keep the same order and maybe ask Dr. Pochron, and then we'll just go down the line?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, great.
Okay, so the first question is, what made you want to get involved in the field that you're involved in?
I'm going to set the bar high, David. See if you can keep up. So what made me, yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, my background is like Karina's in that I have a PhD in anthropology. And for my doctorate, I went to Tanzania and I studied wild baboons. And the reason I moved to Stony Brook University was because I was Pat Wright's postdoc. And so when I was done chasing baboons around the savannah, I got the opportunity to chase lemurs around Madagascar in the rainforest. And I was all primed to become a great primatologist. But here's the thing with primatology, you can only bring one student to the field at a time. And you can usually only pick like the student with the highest GPA. And I thought that was pretty frustrating because a lot of students, I mean, come on, really, you all secretly want to study monkeys. Everybody wants to study, like what's better than a monkey, right? So when I was hired by Sustainability Studies, I had an opportunity to sort of reinvent my research program. And the director at the time was a guy named Martin Schunan, and he really wanted to get students involved in research. But of course, he wasn't going to pay me for that exactly. And so I was trying to come up with a research plan that would let me get as many students involved as I could take. And that was going to cost nothing. And so I'm sitting around my house one time wondering what's cheap, what's dirt cheap. I came up with worms and dirt. And I thought, oh, that's pretty great. And I was such an academic snob. I thought, oh, I've mastered monkeys. How hard can worms be? Well, let me just tell you, I was wrong about that. It turns out that worms are really hard because, you know, all that chemistry that nobody really liked to take, that I don't like to take either. Yeah, well, it turns out if you're going to study small shit, you got to know the chemistry. And so I've had to get much better at chemistry. Luckily, many of my students are better at a whole suite of things than I am. And I encourage them to build bridges. So we come up with questions. I'm really, my own research interests all have to do with Roundup and secondary effects of Roundup. Everybody's like cancer, cancer, cancer. I'm not really so worried about cancer. I'm actually worried about how it changes microbial communities, both in the soil and in the guts of people who eat it. So I team with people like Dr. Liliana Davalos and Dr. Jackie Collier, who are great genomicists and geneticists. And some of my students team with people like Dr. Niels Volkenborn to put sensors, not with worms, because we also do cockroaches and planaria and microbes and stuff. And yeah, so I guess I'm wondering, why did I get in here? To get more students, to give students more of an opportunity to do research. And I was particularly wanting to get undergraduates involved in research because you guys are hungry, and I wanted to be able to get the B students involved in research as well as the A students. So Worm Lab's fun. Come join us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pochron, and thank you, Dr. Yager, for joining us this evening. I would also like to ask you if you'd be willing to tell the members a little bit more about your research, because I think it's something that's very important And I remember when I was taking your class, it was, you know, something that you were sharing with us regularly, and I think the members would really enjoy it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I want to also hooray for anthropology. Like Dr. Pochron, I also did my PhD in anthropology. And what I love about anthropology is that it's so encompassing. It's like humans are involved in everything now, right? Of course. So you can really go anywhere with it. And the same can be said with sustainability, I want to say, because, you know, back when we were young, we didn't have sustainability. There was no class on sustainability. This is a new field that we're part of making this field now. You guys are part of it. You guys are the pioneers that are going out and making the careers and defining the field right now. So that's really the exciting part about sustainability too, because we need it and you can go anywhere with it. So basically what anthropology allowed me to do too is I also it's a 4-field, I went to a 4-field approach university. So what that means is that it included archaeology, primatology and human evolution, and
Linguistics.
social anthropology. What's that?
Linguistics.
And linguistics, exactly. So we studied it all, you know, but I actually ended up doing my master's in archaeology, and I worked as an archaeologist in New Mexico, actually, for a few years. And they have a great law there where before you dig anything, you actually have to have an archaeologist come and survey it. And obviously, we've been all over the planet. Of course, we've been all over New Mexico. And I ended up documenting, doing a lot of mapping, which is how I got into mapping and GIS initially. And then I started to also look at South America because actually my mom was this is a total personal story too, kind of on that side, but my mom was adopted from Peru. So I think I always had in the back of my mind, like, you know, I wanted to learn more about that. And I ended up going for my master's in Inca archaeology. So that's, you've probably heard of the Inca Empire. It's, you know, the greatest empire in the Americas in terms of, you know, the breadth of accomplishments in terms of, I think, you know, 60 million people from, you know, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, all in this one empire. You think of it as the Roman Empire. It's the equivalent, but in America. And of course, with the Spanish colonization and with the pandemic that they brought, 90% of the population died immediately, of the indigenous population. And the entire, you know, way that they had built and framed their civilization, which was completely different than anything we have known in the Western Hemisphere, is that they didn't have any markets. You know, they didn't have money. You know, so these are just fascinating things that I got interested in, and I ended up studying in South America. Well, of course, when I went down and was, you know, documenting all these sites in the field, and I was looking at photographs and satellite images of times past, you can't help but notice the glaciers are also melting too. So that's, and the people that were living there, the indigenous people that were living there, you know, today, not, you know, not to discount, you know, what happened, you know, 500 years ago. I think that's equally important to learn from, because there's a lot to learn from indigenous knowledge, of course, but it's continuing today. And the people that are there today are basically the least responsible for climate change, right? So that's how I made that bridge into, all right, you know, look, I really want to know what they're seeing in the landscape, what's important to them in the landscape that we can learn from. So that's where I made the bridge into this more holistic approach, where I was looking at, well, how are they using the land? How do they relate to their environment? How do they manage the water resources? And then of course, with the backdrop of, gosh, how are they going to manage this in the next 5, 10, 20 years with the amount of change that's happening? So that's how I got into it.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Okay, so the next question is for Dr. Taylor, and I'm going to kind of combine two of the questions on the list, but what is one class past or present that you enjoyed teaching the most, and which is like, what is one class you think is the most beneficial for all students to take?
For all students across SoMAS or sustainability?
I guess in general, whichever you think best fits the question.
Okay. So actually I'm looking across, I've had probably 10 of you in different classes, primarily the environmental philosophy class, which I enjoy in a certain way. I think that our value systems and our moral traditions that end up making much of our decision is an often underrated part of the way we go about making decisions about sustainability and about our environment. I think we need good science to know what the best decisions are, but I don't think science informs our caring. I think our caring is a whole different moral and ethical tradition that isn't necessarily always informed by reason, because clearly we're a nation that doesn't follow reason very well. Look at the last 5 years. So this is one where I think that the more that we begin to reflect on some of these value systems and the way that we've come about these and begin to critically analyze them, the more we might be able to make better decisions as individuals and as communities into the future. If you're asking me though, which ones I would prefer, like which ones I actually think I would prefer to teach, I probably prefer more of an independent research or some of the more interdisciplinary classes that we used to teach, like the capstone course in 401, or Dr. Pochron and Dr. Cassidy and I co-taught the Pine Barrens class last summer. And I really enjoy that sort of collaborative thing, because the thing that I love more about being a thinker than anything is somebody telling me a lot that I don't know. That makes me really happy, because again, that's where, to my mind, the interdisciplinary nature of environmental research is always there. Even if you're in the sciences and you're going to be doing environmental science, inevitably environmental science is applied. So you're going to have to deal with communities, you're going to have to deal with politicians, you're going to have to deal with regulation. And it seems to me that those interdisciplinary moments of kind of mixing in between these disciplines is the really exciting part. You know, I mean, again, my background's in English. I could have stayed in an English department, nothing wrong with that. We'd have talked a lot about books, but you know, I mean, I like books, they're fine. But I also think that what's more important if we're writing about environmental books and we're talking about these is to see the application of them and to see how they impact communities in light of certain other kinds of decision making. So to my mind, I find it most interesting when I see students, especially from different fields, encounter other disciplines and be anxious, uncomfortable. And to my mind, that's when they learn the most, because when you're uncomfortable, you're kind of more open to thinking differently. So that to me is kind of the most important thing I think of, as both the classes that I teach, what I enjoy the most is where I'm learning. And then two, I think the most valuable classes for students are those sort of exploratory moments where you're out of your comfort zone.
That was a really good answer. Thank you so much.
It's okay. I paid somebody for that answer beforehand. I got my $5 worth.
So the next question, I think if I'm not wrong, we're gonna go around and have everyone answer, and that would be, what is one last thing you want to share with all the students?
huh. Try weird stuff. Go to the weird talks. Go try things that you don't think you're gonna like. Go listen to people who you think are stupid. Go listen to people who you think are boring and see if you can figure out what other people find interesting or intelligent about them. I think that Dr. Taylor is right that pushing yourself outside of the comfort zone is scary, right? It requires some courage. And then the last thing I would say is it's okay to fail. Not your classes and not because you're not studying, but it's okay to try hard shit and not succeed at it. Because sometimes you're not succeeding because you find you don't have a passion for it. Sometimes you don't succeed because you realize that you had your goal wrong. It's better to take the hits on your chin and fail than to always succeed, because then you don't know your own limits. So try hard shit and fail. Listen to boring people and stupid people and see if you can learn some stuff. Go try weird shit. That's what I got. I'm glad you're recording this. I have such a potty mouth. I'm so sorry.
I think that was a great answer, and I think the other professors would largely agree with that. Dr. Yager, do you have any additional points? Do you agree? Do you disagree about anything you'd like to share with students?
I agree completely. I think it's a great idea to always get out of your comfort zones and expose yourself to as many opportunities as you can, you know. I would also say, it's not like we gotta, you know, it's not like we were applying to college and we're like, oh, one day I'm gonna go be a professor at Stony Brook, you know. You don't really know where you're gonna end up. The whole world is open to us, right? But what I know that works for me is that you just keep following your passion. So just keep following that thing that keeps you up at night. You know, that thing that you care about so much that you want to do something about it, that you care, that it's gonna take you to the next step. It's gonna bring you to that group you're supposed to meet. It's gonna bring you to those networks. It's gonna get you that job that gets you in the door. That's gonna get you to the next job. That's gonna get you to your graduate degree. That's gonna get you to your next, you know, to your next thing, whatever it may be. Because what you're doing is you're just following that one interest that you just want to know more about. You just like, it compels you. So hold on to that thing. Don't let anybody stop you from that thing. You know, that's the thing you need to follow, no matter what it is. No matter, because that's going to take you somewhere.
Very well said.
Matt or Emily, can I share a screen real quickly?
Yeah, let me just enable it for you.
Yeah, I want to show you something that'll help me wrap up.
You should be able to now.
All right. All right, so here's my desktop. And then, can y'all all see this, the Northwoods frog call phonology?
Yes.
Okay. So, if you listen to this, the spring peepers, which are the middle of March, just started 3 days ago out in my backyard. So, not Willie. Hang on, crap. Hang on. So, if you listen to this, it's this beautiful moment of, let me start again, of what the frogs sound like throughout the summer and the different frogs you'll hear. So I'll stop sharing because, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Hang on. It's a lot of frog calls. So I'm showing you that because this was part of my passion today. The spring peepers, you know, and I'm lucky enough to live with a wetlands in my backyard. So I get to hear spring peepers when they first start. And I actually the other day heard my first leopard frog in one of the kettle ponds out in the Manorville Hills when I was out hiking. To my mind, the one thing I guess I hope sometimes is that students realize that classrooms are classrooms, and it's good. Make good grades, you get more opportunities, you get gold stars, people think you're spiffy and all that other shit. But the bottom line is are you thinking? Are you thinking in and outside of class? Like the beauty of today is I sat around playing music to frog calls all day and just getting out my guitar and figuring out how to play with spring peepers and just thinking about how I'd want to consider that being and how it's impacted, you know, my evenings. Like I'll walk out after this, I'll have a nice beer and I'll listen to spring peepers. And everything that I teach, everything that I hear and learn from my students, everything that I learn from my colleagues, all of this isn't something that's just an academic exercise. It's what I'm going to do. It's what I'm going to do right now. It's what I'm going to do in the morning. It's what I'm going to do tomorrow morning and the day after. And to my mind, this is the part where just like Dr. Pochron, you know, was saying, and just like Dr. Yager was saying, stay open, stay engaged, stay excited, stay passionate, because it's school. You're going to get a degree, one hopes, right? And then you're going to go away. But the passion that you go into this isn't about getting effing grades. The reason you're doing this is to think and to be aware. Listen to frog calls if you can. Watch a bird that flies by and try to know what it is. Try to talk to it. Try to play a song to it. Maybe it'll give you a song back. You know, these are the things, to my mind, where we separate sometimes our education and our sort of job aspirations from our lives. And to my mind, I really hope that those are somehow intimately connected, because if we really believe in this notion of what we call sustainability, to my mind, that's probably one of the greater parts of it, to where our value systems that we go about in our job earning and our sort of educational passions and in our lives are not so separate. So frog calls, spring peepers.
That was a really great answer too.
Yeah, I paid more for that one than the first one.
Yeah, that one came with audio as well. So.
Exactly.
But I think now we're gonna open it up to student questions. So anyone who wants to ask a question can raise their hand, and we'll call on people, and you can address whichever professor you're addressing your question towards.
I would just say this is a really good opportunity for any students who may not have taken any classes with these professors to, you know, ask about any interests that you have, if they're teaching any classes that may align with your interests, if they have any opportunities available, anything that comes to mind. This is a really good opportunity to pick their brains.
Okay, well, I have a question if no one else is gonna go. Dr. Pochron, I know you mentioned earlier about students getting involved in research, particularly undergraduates. How would you encourage maybe some students here to get involved in your research, and also the other professors? What's the best way for students to reach out to professors and find out if they can also do research with you?
So if you know who you want to do research with, just go ask them. It's nice to come to office hours or to send an email these days and just say, hey, I really think it's interesting what you're doing. Do you have time? Do you have room for an intern over the summer? And I get that question quite frequently. And I have a pathway, a clear pathway. So if you guys want to know what the pathway is, you can take SUS 351, SUS 352. It's every spring and every fall. It's Wednesdays from 9 in the morning till 12 You don't have to take one to take the other. The prereqs are low because I put a gazillion in there. Anybody who's had any lab class can come join the Worm Lab. After you've taken one semester of the Worm Lab, you can lead a project, and you can take it from there. And it's on you to figure out what you want to do, but your other students are going to inspire you, and your other academic experiences are going to inspire you. So we just published a paper about cockroaches, where that particular student built a bridge between SoMAS and then biology and sustainability. She did, I think we did 5 experiments in that paper. If you're asking for my advice about how you get involved in other people's labs, so I have people with, I have students with aspirations for graduate school and they want to get those internships. Well, Kamazima, Dr. Luisa puts many available on Blackboard. You can always find those. But maybe you want to get involved in ecology and evolution, or in engineering, or in business. And I tell my students, find 5 people who you want to get involved with and send them an email. 2 or 3 people will say yes. And also there are, it's a little late this year, but at the beginning of March, Eureka has fellowships. So if you have a competitive GPA, you can apply for a Eureka fellowship. That'll give you $4,000 to work in somebody's lab. It doesn't have to be science. I know Dr. Taylor had some students apply for Eureka with him. And, you know, it should be fun. You should, depending on the lab, you get a chance to work with graduate students. You get a chance to work with other like-minded students. You get a chance to work with other professors. Yeah, highly recommended, and just ask.
Thank you very much. I think that was very informative. Dr. Yager or Dr. Taylor, I don't know, do you have anything to add on to that, or?
Go ahead, Karina.
Yeah, I just echo the same. Just reach out and ask. That's pretty much how I've found students who work on my projects. And also your needs change, you know, like previously I've needed people to help with mapping. So if you have GIS skills, but now I'm actually working with a Stony Brook student from journalism, because she's, we're working on more storyboard ideas. So, you know, again, it's also just depends on your background, like what, you know, what you're most interested in, and like aligning that with a professor and their research in a way that, you know, benefits both of you, because you're bringing some skills and your interests, and they're benefiting from your help with that, and then you're also learning about their research and getting experience and how to apply what you're learning in new ways, and that can, you know, help with a publication or with a website or with a research internship, that all of which are great experiences.
So yeah, for me, just come bug the crap out of me. That's the way it usually works, and I then end up bugging the crap out of you. So that's called mentorship. But I will say, so like right now I have one student interning with a group in Maine that's doing lobster trap recovery. Actually, I'm talking to Kellyanne about maybe doing some diving up there this summer. They're also working on rebuilding a large sardine boat, an 83-foot boat. And she's helping them do outreach materials in increasing their database and sort of helping them overall about how to do better communication, because again, she's an environmental humanities major, but it's the one where she's working with some different people that are actually teaching her a lot. So my idea is every student who's in SoMAS should have an internship, a volunteer, or some kind of work where you've got a portfolio in something close to your field before you graduate. The other one then that I really stress for all of the folks that in my major is that they all do an independent study project. And so I've had students help me with one of my book projects. I've had students now working on this story map. And I think it's one that more and more I'm convinced, and this is something for you guys to be thinking about, that as you move toward graduation, you think about these possibilities of connecting with the kind of groups that you would like to imagine your future in, so that you're actually sort of beginning to create that future. And I'll also say, I think it's important too, if you plan to go to work right after your bachelor's, that you do understand that, you know, it's good to have good grades, it's good to have the degree, but it's a very competitive field. And I think here for the next few years after COVID, it's even going to be more competitive. So sort of, you know, distinguish yourself by doing some other things between volunteer work. This group, make sure your group's out there doing it. Make sure the work that your group does is, you know, on some sort of portfolio platform, so that when you go for a job interview or an internship interview, people see what you've done, so that they know that it's just not that you've been a good student, but that you've been a good student and applied those ideas in practical situations. I think that's really essential. And go out and learn frogs and birds and crap. So. By the way, Clara, if it's a real raven, and there are a few ravens on Long Island, but not many, it's primarily standard crows and fish crows. So if you have ravens there, let me know. I'll come out and look at them. Be cool.
No, this was last month, so
okay.
they've moved on. But they were like huge, like more like the size of a red-tailed hawk. And
Yeah.
instead of cawing, they would actually croak.
Yep.
They croaked. And when they were flying, like their necks were more elongated than like a regular crow. It looked almost like a cormorant in flight.
Yeah.
But it was a corvid. It was amazing.
Yeah. No, those sounds like a raven. That's cool.
Yeah, it was truly amazing. One of my favorite bird sightings this year.
Very nice. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. One question I would ask to the panel as a whole, and I think it's been sort of touched on, but I know some people were asking about graduate school, if anyone had any advice or yeah, just any pointers or tips in general on what students should be doing. I know Dr. Taylor just spoke a little bit about you know, differing experiences, but anything else that you think is important?
I'm getting distracted by Clara's bird. Yeah, so get those internships, have a competitive GPA. In the fall of your, okay, so I'm talking about STEM. So Dr. Taylor could address different aspects. In the fall of your senior year, apply for, there's an NSF graduate fellowship. Apply for that. Even if you don't get it, the preparation of applying for it gets your package ready for graduate school. Don't be afraid to try and fail. It's okay to fail it. If you have a high GPA and you've taken the right classes, and by right classes, it depends on what you're aiming for, but like say conservation biology. So make sure you got enough chemistry and physics and calculus in there on top of all the stuff that's actually interesting and exciting. And apply for a bunch of programs, apply for more than you think you have to, and you'll get into some of them. Even if you don't have the GPA to get in it, into the program of your choice, go find a master's program that will get you there. Get into that. I'm looking at you, Evan. Evan was one of my, I don't know that you were, I certainly mentored you, although you weren't in my major. Go get that master's degree in something that's useful. A lot of times a master's is not preferred because you have to pay for it, but sometimes a master's is paid for. People will tell you, no, it's not paid for, but I'm going to say that about half my students who go into master's programs find some that get paid for, so including here at Stony Brook. I'm sure Karina has something to add to it, but go for it, try it.
Yeah, I think that's that's great recommendation. And also also know the option too, that, you don't have to rush into it after your undergraduate. But I would echo that, preparing is a good idea. Even just taking, like, even if you don't know if you want to go to graduate school yet, go take the GRE and take it right after you graduate, because you're going to be in test taking mode, and it's going to be really hard to remember that after you're out working, in the real world for a couple of years. And if you have to go back and take your GRE, you're like, oh no, I should have taken that. And it lasts you I think 5 years. So I would take that right away, because that's when you're at your top of your game, and you can explore different programs. And I actually, I paid for my master's, and it cost a lot because I went to Columbia. I'm still paying for that. But you know what? It was worth it. And then I didn't pay for my doctoral program, and I haven't paid for anything, and then I had a postdoc, and, everything came out of that. So, it can go both ways. And also, I didn't really know when I started my master's, I wasn't really confident I wanted to do a PhD. I wanted a master's, because I was like, maybe this will be enough for me. And this will, of course, once I got in there, I got more of the bug, more of the, oh my gosh, I need to do more. I need to do more. I want to go on. And then I was really confident about my PhD program. And then it was just like a shoo-in, because at that point I was, really knew what I wanted to do and why and where and with whom. Then you really get, when you get that, eagle focus, then there's nothing stopping you then, right? So be open, to all sorts of possibilities. And, we're here to help you explore those ideas too. So if you're getting to that point and you want to chat about it, please reach out.
So by the way, Clara, the reason there's so many buzzards here at Riverhead, it's because of all of the breweries and all of the people who keel over outside the breweries that then bring the vultures in. So that's a joke. I'm teasing. All right. So let's see. When I finished my bachelor's, I had spent every summer working at a camp for special needs folks, and I was the recreation programmer. So I was doing adaptive phys ed. And I had a job lined up to work on a Navajo reservation working with Down syndrome people. And I was going to move to northern New Mexico and write poetry and work with Down syndrome Navajo people. And I decided instead to go do my master's. And it's one of the worst mistakes I've ever made in my life. I should have gone and worked there for a year. Absolutely would have been a better human. I would have learned more about life. It would have done me so much more good. And I probably would have been a better poet. And then just before I started my PhD, I went and I lived in Germany for a few months, and I was studying German at a German university. And they offered me the chance to stay for another year. And instead I came back and I started my PhD immediately. That was the second worst mistake I've ever made in my life. I should have stayed in Germany another year, and my German would now be good instead of knowing a few bad phrases and how to order beer. I remembered that part, right? I think what Dr. Pochron and Dr. Yager is saying is really right, which is, graduate school is wonderful. It's intense. It's amazing. It's really enjoyable when you're ready. But it's also, though, if you're not ready, it also is something that I think can lead you to a lot of heartache and a lot of misdirection. And I really do think about this, because we were talking about this earlier, that when I was doing a PhD in English, my dissertation was the history of science. And I was really out in the field doing work, and my research was going to these science libraries, and many of my faculty mentors didn't know what to do with me. And I think a little bit of it is because I just was this student that didn't take enough time to see that maybe there were other programs that would have fit my interest a little bit better at a time when the field that I study now was just beginning. And so the one thing I would say to you is be patient with yourself. Be patient with what you're learning. Be patient with your passions so that you can go out and, like we were saying earlier, is think about the things you really, really enjoy. And then when it gets to to graduate school, it isn't just studying to make good grades. It's studying because you care. And because grades are grades, you'll get them or you won't, and then you'll go back and get them when you need to. But knowing why you're studying something is far more interesting than just making sure you get good grades. And I guess that's the one that I think when you get to graduate school, it's so much more intense than undergraduate work. And I can tell you, like, at least in English, I don't know about in other fields, but, honestly, like I started with 12 peers in my PhD program and only 6 finished because they didn't know why they were there. They were good students. They made A's, but that didn't mean that they were thinkers because they didn't know why they were thinking. They didn't have a reason to be thinking. They were just good students. And I mean, it's fine to get an A. I don't have a problem with that. Good, gives you more opportunities. But I'm way more interested in somebody who's thinking who gets a B than I am somebody who's not thinking who gets an A. And I'll be honest with you, I think that B person will make a better grad student because they're doing something that they're passionate about. And they're going to follow through with that in a way when there are no more classes and there are no more grades and you're left to do all this work because that's what you do. And that's the one I think is really important to know why and what it is you're passionate about. Grades will happen. Grades are easy. Don't worry about that crap. Be thinking about why you want to do it. And and I think like Dr. Yager suggested, get some experience. Go out there and do some things. Figure out snowy owls and ravens. It's nice stuff. All right.
Thank you so much, all 3 of you, for the great advice. As someone who is going to be graduating in like 7 weeks and has kind of little direction, this was particularly helpful for me. At least, like, I feel a little bit better. I may or may not reach out to you via email just for some reassurance and some questions, if you don't mind. But thank you so much. We are blanking. What was I going to say? Oh, we are over by like around 7 minutes. So if you've been seeing people trickle out, that's why. Does anyone else have any quick questions, or should we wrap up, or?
Your checks are on the way, Dr. Taylor.
Oh yeah, sure.
I sent them out earlier.
Yeah, right.
Checks of gratitude, yes.
Gratitude is more important than checks.
All right. If there's no more questions, I guess we can wrap up. I hope everyone will join me in thanking Dr. Pochron, Dr. Taylor, and Dr. Yager for joining us and taking the time out of their schedule tonight to be here to talk to us. Everything you all said was extremely interesting and very helpful. So I hope you know that. Yes, so if anyone wants to stick around to chat, that would be great. But otherwise, thank you all for coming to this meeting tonight and being a good audience. And yeah, I don't really have anything else to say.
Oh, keep your eyes peeled for the emails tomorrow, but that's it.
Oh, Matt, you stick around. I have to ask you something.
Okay.
All right, but yeah, thank you all so much for being here and have a lovely night.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.
By the way, Matt, how are you doing? I hadn't seen you in forever.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. You have such nice hair. So envious. See? Look at that. All right. Are you about to graduate?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, send me an email. Let me know how you're doing, okay?
I will.
All right.
Good to see
All
you.
right, Sophia, you and I are talking all the time, so, all right?
I know. I'm always in your
All right.
inbox.
All right. I'll see you folks later. Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice night. Let me just stop.